Immeasurably profound and infinitely subtle is rarely encountered even in millions of ages. Now we see it, hear it, receive and maintain it. May we completely realize the Tathagata's true meaning.
Good evening, everybody. Please sit comfortably and so that we can see each other. Tonight I'll be presenting what's called a teisho, and that literally means presenting the shout. And it's a staple and a feature in Zen tradition. There are different approaches to working with the Dharma that we use at the temple. Sometimes it's very logical and very clear. Sometimes not so much. But it's always to the heart. And it's always about really embodying and realizing the truth of our own inherent perfection. I have to say, I was dismayed today. A person sent me a video clip, which is, dangerous anyway, right? Of what shall I say, a religious leader from a different tradition altogether. Which is, it's kind of a fraught with peril thing to do, but I looked anyway. And the point of this particular speaker was that the view they expressed was that the worst thing you could possibly do would be to trust yourself. This is the mark of complete fallibility, foolishness, and the utter mistake, and instead you must trust their version of reality as they teach it, as revealed by the deity they adhere to and believe in. And as the speaker went on in a more and more impassioned exposition of this, I grew sadder and sadder for him and for all the people that are really taking that in. Imagine if your entire worldview is that you must not trust yourself. Like, wow, really? How do you figure out what to get for lunch? I mean, how do you, I understand if one has an addiction of some kind or some kind of traumatic event or it's always wise to see what other folks have to say about things and to check science and data and peer review, and of course like that. I mean, there actually is reasons to look for counsel and advice, but bottom line, end of the day, no one can live your life for you. Absolutely not, even though they might love you dearly and care about you authentically and sincerely. Still, you have to take your own naps, and you have to decide what you're going to do, right? Like, oh shit. And it's funny because when I was young, I thought if I just figure this and that a piece out, then it'll just, now I know. Have the years taught me. This is not just a koan for 20-somethings. This is a lifelong, I hope for you, it is a lifelong living question. Our society is in great turmoil right now because people grasp grab tightly in their fist a set of ideas and identities that are more important to them than reality itself, more important than objective reality, is this desire to cling and to clench. But, it's really nothing new. This is not a new 21st century American disease. Not hardly. This is a very human thing. I'll read to you a case from the Blue Cliff Record, I think points this out quite lovely, in quite a lovely way. This is the Heikigan Roku, case 56, the Blue Cliff Record, case 56. Chinshan's one arrow point smashes 3 barriers. There's a little bit of a pointer here, a little wind up. The Buddha never appeared in the world. There is nothing to be given to people. The great founder Bodhidharma never came from the West. He never passed on the tradition mind to mind. But since people of these times do not understand, they frantically search outside themselves. They are far from knowing that the one great matter, right where they are, cannot be grasped, even by 1,000 sages. Right now, where do seeing and not seeing, hearing and not hearing, speaking and not speaking, knowing and not knowing, where do these things come from? If you are unable to apprehend clearly, then at least try to understand inside the cave of entangling vines, this test case which I cite. Although this is fairly clear in its language, we can linger just a moment. The Buddha's never appeared in the world. There's nothing to be given to people. The great founder Bodhidharma never came from the West and never passed on the transmission mind to mind. If you've hung around Zen circles at all, or Buddhist practice like Buddhism 101, it all says, oh, the Buddha appeared in the world, and he gave the Dharma to the people. And then Bodhidharma, the great person, came from India and brought it up into China and came from the West. And he transmitted that mind to mind. That's like 101 Zen stuff, right? Like that's what you'd read in an article somewhere, right? And it's not untrue. In fact, the Buddha did appear in the world. We have pretty credible evidence to say there probably actually was a dude. Although if it turned out to be a committee, it wouldn't bother me at all, but probably was a person, we think historically. And he spent 40 years in his case, give or take, teaching, combusting his life to give the Dharma to people. That's all he did. So something's going on there. And then Bodhidharma famously did, or a movement that Bodhidharma is a figurative placeholder for. Either way, it doesn't matter. I mean, the sonnets of Shakespeare are exquisite, whether William Shakespeare was the person who wrote them or not, right? I mean, beauty is beauty. And this transmission definitely occurs. I have some familiarity with it, I can say. It's real. And yet these statements are completely true. They're also completely true. The Buddha's never appeared in the world. There's nothing to be given. The patriarch never came from the West and passed nothing by transmitting shit to no one. How can this be so? Is this just some kind of weird rhetorical device meant to scramble the egg of the intellect? No, it's not. It's not just wordplay. It's not just a word game, or it's not just being iconoclastic or deconstructionist or any of these things. It really isn't. You have to understand that when a Zen master or an enlightened person is presenting teaching, they they will move from different points of view, all of which are true, because they're not stuck. They're not clenched to something. No, transmission is a thing, and I've got it, and you don't, and you need it. Oh, what a stink. What a bad smell that would make. To be clinging to this. Or worse yet, the teacher has transmission and I don't, and I want it. Oh, climb on that hook. And yet there is a transmission, but no clinging. From a very real point of view, there's no way a Buddha could appear anywhere. And I'm quite happy with our statue from Nepal. It's neat. Right? But since people of these times do not understand, and that's an interesting thing you see throughout these koans, they're always saying, well, people these days, you know. It's a hymn sung around the world, right? Well, kids these days, you know, since people of these times do not understand, they frantically search outside themselves. Interestingly enough, the time in which this was written, right, the Zen masters of a few hundred years before this were the more severe, pioneering, the generation of folks who really had to make it go, and there was a lot of strife in society, right? And then at the time when this is written, things are pretty good. I mean, the dynasty is doing well. Art, poetry, culture is flourishing. It's been quite some time since we've heard of war. Even there hasn't been plague for a while. Things are nice. Culture is starting to get curlicues and flourishes, you know, like the Baroque, because we're past just trying to survive like the medieval, right? And so in this case, people these days don't understand. They frantically search outside themselves. Because after all, they live in the shadow of those great masters from a couple hundred years ago, which they began to take on very mythic figures, you know, like Yoda and, you know, big, you know, Gandalf, you know, these masters, they had these massive archetypal roles to the common person. That's kind of a problem, right? Why? Because you're not a little green Yoda. Right? It's something outside you that's the cool thing to be. Well, that won't do. They frantically search outside themselves. They are far from knowing that the one great matter where they are, this great matter where you are is your life, is your death, is your existence itself. The very fact that you are, that is the great matter. You are the great matter. You are it. The one great matter right where they are cannot be grasped even by 1,000 sages. So there you are with your planner, trying to map out the well-lived life. Crafting balance, or planning a year of maniac focus, or whatever you're doing. And somehow, your life is not captured by these goals, or by these plans, or by these identities, however hard won they may be. Still, be careful. Be very careful. This is who I am. This is how my world is. This is how things are going to be. This is fixed. This is safe. This is me. This is it. Now what? Because it's going to happen. How many times has it already happened? You think that train's going to stop? Well, one day gravity will win. But until that day, constant churn. So this great matter cannot be grasped even by 1,000 sages. 1,000 Gandalfs and Yodas and masters of whatever kind couldn't grasp the miraculousness of your life. Right now, where do seeing and not seeing come from? That's a real question, by the way. It's not just a poetic device. It's the kind of question that becomes very intimate in the depths of retreat. When you really learn how to do this thing and you learn how to be with your body and your mind in the right way, and you put yourself in the situation where, like tonight, there's some mojo going, there's some energy in the space, and you stop fighting it and resisting it, and you just sink in and really do the thing. These kinds of questions, where does hearing and not hearing come from? Where does seeing and not seeing come from? Where does speaking come from? Where does not speaking come from? Knowing. How about not knowing? Where does this come from? This is a most pointed and serious investigation. You should thoroughly examine it. If you are unable to apprehend the truth of this clearly, then at least try to understand this entangling vine. Entangling vine means kind of like wordy complications. And that's the case. The main case. Chan Traveler Liang asked Qin Shan. So we have two characters in this story, okay? And there's a Zen traveler, Liang, that's his name, Li, right? And he came to ask Master Qin, how is it when a single arrowhead smashes 3 barriers at once? How is it when a single arrowhead smashes 3 barriers at once? The master said, well, bring out the Lord within those barriers for me to see. Kind of interesting exchange. Now, this is a traveler who's going around from master to master. We don't know exactly what they're trying to do. It's not like spelled out, but testing their understanding is pretty evident. That's not a beginner's kind of first question to ask somebody. Like, hey, where's the bathroom? Or, what's with the funny robes, or any of those kind of questions that would be normal ones, Hi, tell me, how is it when a single arrow smashes the 3 barriers? It's like, you've been on the road alone for a while, have you? And this koan never really spells out the 3 barriers, by the way. It's not defined. One can surmise probably greed, anger, ignorance. Those are the 3 poisons in the Mahayana teaching. Greed, of course, being the mind and the body's kind of willingness to obsession with bringing things in and taking, and and then anger is the opposite, of course. There's always a back and a front, so pushing away. I want this, I hate that. Oh, I can't live without you. Oh, get away from me. Oh, I'm so great, I can't stand myself. That was great. Who do I think I am? And then the root of it, of course, delusion or ignorance. Not seeing to the nature of the self. So I don't know for sure, but that's what I'm going to guess. How is it when a single arrowhead smashes through the 3 barriers? With cape. Bum, ba, ba. Yeah. And then the Zen master said, tell me, bring out the Lord within those 3 barriers for me to see. Don't let the Lord thing trick you. That's that is a loaded word. And when the early translators of these texts were trying to write into English, they would borrow these St. James kind of terms. So I would say something more like, bring out the source within of those barriers for me to see. That's what it means. You talk about smashing through all three with one shot. Tell me, where do they come from? Show me. That's what it kind of is point. That's what I feel from it anyway. Now it's interesting. The translation here says, "So then, knowing my fault, I must change." But another translator says, "I failed to catch the Lord in these things before, but next time I'll succeed." I didn't quite get that the first time, but next time I'll get them. Because obviously he couldn't respond. Now, this is an interesting thing. This is not just like a pissing contest from centuries ago. This is actually the masters trying to help catalyze the deepening of the awakening of the student, to either affirm their experience or to refine it or to reject it outright, but to be of use in either case. And this is, one of the primary functions of a so-called Zen teacher. Really, it's not teaching so much. It's giving a way for a practitioner to interface with the tradition in a human form, really. To check and to help and to be guided and stuff like that. And also to be affirmed. Well, in this case, right? So he says, well, I failed to catch the Lord of these things before, but next time I will succeed. Shows a little gumption, I suppose. Of course, there's plenty on display already with this fellow. And then the master says, no need to wait. How about right now? See, again, it's not acceptable to live in the ideas. Oh, I'll get that next time. Yeah, I understand. I'll get that. Yeah, right now. Why wait? Right? He goes from one nest to another. And of course, the mother pushes the bird out of the other nest, too. No. Out. You know the feeling, huh? So let's track again. So how is it when the single arrow smashes three barriers? Well, bring me the source of those barriers right now and show me. Bring me the Lord within those barriers for me to see. I failed to catch the Lord before, but next time I'll get him. No need to wait for a next time. Interesting, this response. Again, I'll read you both translations that I looked at. The Pilgrim says, a well-shot arrow doesn't hit anywhere. A well-shot arrow doesn't hit anywhere. The other translation says, I made a really nice shot, but no one else can see it. Still persisting. Can you see the arrogance in this? Well, I did a great job, but no one else can see it. After saying, show me right now. Well, I really did great. No one can see. It's this over and over, yeah? And he flourishes his sleeves and turns his back on the Zen master and starts to walk away. Now at that, let the dude go, whatever. That's a real response, just the conditions aren't right. But this This master was so kind and grandmother that he yelled at him. Reverend, come here a minute. At which point the pilgrim turned his head and looked. Then the master ran up and grabbed him and held him. I like this guy. Leaving aside for the moment a single arrowhead smashing 3 barriers, let's see you shoot an arrow right now. And he's holding them. Zen is an embodied thing. The pilgrim hesitated and was unable to respond. Probably was having a hard time breathing. So then the master hit him and said, I suspect this fellow will be doubting for 30 more years at least. And then the master walked away. Is that mean? Is that abuse? There is such a thing as religious abuse, you know. Is that this? See, the thing is, if you have a very rare disease, like I'll share personally, our family had a very, very rare diagnosis within it. Something on the odds of 1, maybe 80 people in the country at a given time have this particular disease. And in all the country, there are only a few physicians who actually can recognize it for what it is. And the local folks were lovely, brilliant people, and yet, because the condition was so rare, I'm not making this up, this is actually our history. Because the condition was so rare, they miscalled it. Because it looks like something else that's very common. But the common thing is like this, and the reality is more like that. There's a lot more going on. But because this is so loud, people go, oh, it's this. So on really good advice from some Aikido students and some Sangha members who were in the medical profession, we went to Cleveland Clinic. And I was kind of clueless. I honestly thought we would just get another take and maybe tweak the meds up or down a touch, and that would be the day. A box checked off just to be sure, because I want to be sure. And then lo and behold, this lone specialist, very orthodox, conservative Jew, he had the yarmulke, Dr. Hotchkiss. He looked at her, and he looked at me, and he looked at Doan, and he said, she can't leave here. Like, he walked in the room, and he could smell it. Literally, he could smell it. And he could see it. We're like, what? He's like, we need to do more tests. He didn't even bother with, hi, my name is. He didn't have time for that. He's just like, he's a specialist. You know what I'm saying? He deals with kids. Anyway. What, was it harsh for Dr. Hotchkiss to say we couldn't leave? Because I didn't plan to stay. In fact, I didn't want to stay. I had shit to do. I had a life in full swing, you know. I had a brand new professorship I had to tend to, an important gig I had to get ready for. A lot was on the line, you know. I didn't want to do that. None of us expected that. We didn't go there signing on for that. But you know what? My daughter had a really life-threatening condition. And so he was very severe. You can't leave. We need more tests. And I'm not suggesting it. Does that mean? No. I can never bow deeply enough to old Dr. Hotchkiss, who, by the way, went to Tel Aviv to take his skills there. So interesting. He was quite elderly when we met him. I think he went there to die. But leaving that aside. That's what this story is like. Is a spiritual point at which if you don't find someone who can help, it doesn't go well. Put it like that. And so at those times, this person has a whole lot of clinging going on. Maybe some experience, maybe some encounter with the matter, maybe. But a hell of a lot of this clinging stuff. And that is the source of suffering. And so this teacher, in my view anyway, is incredibly kind. You need to stay. We need to take tests. Oh, I don't know, doctor. I've got a busy day. No, really, this is pretty serious. You need to stay. She could die. No. Yes. Do you understand? So the question, enough about my family's history and these old dead people from a different time and culture. How about you? I think one of the important themes of the day is not to cling to what you think you know. We saw it earlier in this morning's reading from Master Ta Hui. It was the same tune in a different key. A student wrote in saying, empty and open in my daily activities, there's not a single thing opposing me. Finally, I realize all things in the three worlds are fundamentally non-existent. Truly, this is peace. Truly, this is happiness, joyful liveliness, having cast it all away. He writes to his teacher, there, teacher, what are you? Mwah. Oh, I'm going to get a gold star back. Can't wait to read Roshi's letter. Finally, letter for Mr. Yen? Oh, it's me. Because he opens it up, and it's rather like, when Weasley there gets the scolding from that, Ronald Weasley! It's just kind of like that. You know what I'm talking about? That letter that screams in the voice of his mother. Don't be fond of purity. Purity makes people weary. Don't be fond of joyful liveliness. Joyful liveliness makes people crazy. As water conforms to the vessel, it accordingly becomes square or round, short or long. As for casting away or not casting away, please think it over more carefully. It goes on, but you get the point. So this business is important. But the most important thing is not the stories of these ancestors or of my daughter. It's your story. It's you, your turn. I encourage you to trust yourself, absolutely trust yourself, and take that self and put it into contact with the tradition and be open to what comes back. You won't regret it. I promise. May it be so.
We'll conclude with the Bodhisattva vows on page 8. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassed. I vow to embody it. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I to embody.
That is the most joyful release I've ever heard of the Bodhisattva. That would stay with me.
The Buddha of the dirge.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming to my Edo nightmare. If you're visiting for the first time or new, the mic is off.